I'd like to call this meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District Board of Education to order at 7 o'clock. This is the regular board meeting of January 15th, 2020. And I would just like to remind everyone at this time that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, so if you could please turn off or silence your cell phones at this time, it would be appreciated. And I would like to call up Mountain House High School to lead us in the pledge.
I'd like to welcome our student Maria Contreras up to lead the pledge.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Matthew Balzerini.
Aye.
Ann Bonilla. Here. Colin Clements.
Here.
Sharon Lampel.
Here.
David Pombo.
Here.
Ruxar Mohammed.
Here.
Approve land or corrections to the agenda.
We'd like to request that info and discussion item A, junior off-campus lunch concept, be moved up to the section where we're honoring students for spelling bee and Girl Scouts. We'd like to get the kids home for homework.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Recognition. District Spelling Bee winners.
I'd like to invite Jennifer Bogle up to announce the winners of this year's spelling bee.
All right, good evening. So I am going to call some students up. When I say your name, would you come up and just line up here in the front, okay? From Altamont, Siddharth Sangapali. From Bethany, Sanvi Banjari. From Bethany, Natalie Navarro. Also from Bethany, Ryan Wong. From Hanson, Ananya Reddy. From Mountain House High School, Hiba Munad. Also from the high school, Edric Baluyat. And from Wicklin, Rohan Prashanth.
I'm going to go down and take a picture.
Very nicely done. If you guys could just wait there, we're going to take a quick picture, okay? Sure.
We have a special person from the high school to recognize tonight. So if Naila Johnson can come up and stand next to me so I can talk about her while she stands here. Give her a hand. And when I'm done telling you about her, she'll come and shake your hands and take a picture. So Naila Johnson is one of our students at Mountain House High School. Really proud of her. In addition to the fact that she's been in the band, I think all 4 years, right? advanced math student since you were in 7th grade, I want to say, 6th grade. Cheer team, yearbook, tons of AP and honors classes. So in addition to all of that work that she's done, she's achieved the ranking of got the Gold Award project in the Girl Scouts organization. So what she did is she spent 114.5 hours, but I'm sure it's probably more than that, with the Youth Action Committee putting together a summer program for them. Gold Award Girl Scouts are asked to identify a community issue that the community is facing and come up with a solution. And so she addressed that community of no community surface opportunities in neighborhoods, put that together, worked with the Youth Action Committee with the CSD to do that, and she's received that distinction, and we're very proud of her. Congratulations, Naila. All right. Go ahead and shake their hands.
I'd like to say congratulations to Naila's parents also, because students don't do that without a lot of support from home. So thank you.
All of the youngsters who aren't here for the high school juniors off-campus discussion can leave now if they so choose. We will move to item A of info and discussion, off-campus discussion, 11th grade lunch concept. Staff report.
Introducing Ben Faubert.
All right. Come on up, ladies. This evening we brought Lauren Moreno, the junior class president, and some of the junior class officers, Hazel Anthony and Maria Contreras, and they're going to present to you a concept that they presented to me, and I ran through Mr. Harrison, and they have it to present to you tonight.
Good evening. My name is Hazel Anthony, and this is Lauren Moreno and Maria Contreras. We are the junior class officers from Mountain House High School, and we are here to present and advocate for off-campus lunch to not only be available for seniors, but for juniors as well.
Okay, so what is it? Off-campus lunch is the ability for students to leave campus during lunch, giving them the option of purchasing and eating food elsewhere. Currently, these options are available for only seniors, but not juniors. These expectations are taken from the handbook and are the expectations that seniors are made to follow. This can be found on page 28 under section closed campus. So some of the expectations are students with more than 4 days of Saturday school will lose off-campus privileges. Juniors may earn the privilege to leave campus for lunch after the first grading period ends. Juniors must submit an application to the office with parent signature to apply for off-campus privilege. Juniors will be notified by email with the determination of their ability to leave campus for lunch. Also, a student who has earned off-campus lunch may have the privilege suspended or revoked because of grades, attendance, or behavior.
Considering the fact that junior year is challenging enough with AP classes and SAT prep, off-campus lunch could substantially be used as motivation for students to work towards the expectations listed in the previous slides. To summarize, some benefits of off-campus lunch would be increased motivation, it would encourage students to work towards the expectations, and it would implement essential characteristics because this would teach morals that could last their whole life, like responsibility, determination, and time management. For the administration and school, it would result in higher percentages for attendance and less crowding during extended lunch success. We know that there would be less crowding during extended lunch success because the majority of the junior class, if given the opportunity, would take up on this privilege, and this is seen through the statistics in the next slide.
We collected data by implementing a survey to the junior class. It stated that it was just a survey. It stated that it was just a survey to collect data of a potential opportunity, and nothing is set in stone. Out of the 150 responses, 99.3% of students voted yes. That means that 99.3% of juniors could potentially raise their grades, raise their attendance, learn responsibility, and perceive good morals. In addition to this, more than 25% of the school's percentages for attendance and grading will increase, a positive impact to the school and the student.
We do recognize that there could be potential negative effects of off-campus lunch, like increased tardiness or absences, but we would implement consequences. The consequences for misusing the given opportunity will ultimately be the same as the seniors. This would be considered a privilege, not a right. Moreover, if a student receives suspension, detention, or does not meet the expectations, off-campus lunch will not be available to that student. In addition to this would be clearly stated to the junior class. They would have to understand that with adult privileges, they must display adult responsibility.
You see, the domino effect is when one event leads to another, like one domino toppling over another, and so on. In this case being made today, each box in the flowchart represents a domino. One point leads to another, which is all beneficial. So with juniors being able to have off-campus lunch, it'll lead to better attendance for students. It also encourages higher grades and high GPAs due to the requirement needed to be met, which leads to a higher percentage in attendance, and grades ultimately benefits the school ratings. Moreover, success will be less crowded during extended lunch because the majority of the junior class will, with the exceptions, qualifications will be given the privilege proven by the data. This is a clear example of a win-win situation, so why not endeavor into what's best for everyone? Thank you. Oh, do you guys have any questions?
Questions or comments by the board?
I would just say thank you for the presentation. Thank you. This is the process that we have. You guys have worked hard. You put this all together. I fully support the idea. I think you guys have done your homework, done the survey. That's great. So thank you very much for that. So you helped me make my decision.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will piggyback on what Mr. Belzerini said. I also like the idea of, after the first grading period, to give the juniors an opportunity to prove their responsibility to earn this. I do have a question for Mr. Faubert. All the advantages that we hear of, because we heard very similar advantages when we were considering this for seniors, are we seeing those advantages, those results?
Absolutely. With the consequences that are there, it's a huge carrot for those students. They know that if they're not following those rules, and rules like if you have it and you're late when you come back for lunch, it's taken away for the first time for a week, and the second time for a month, and the third time you don't get it anymore for the rest of the year. So there's different things like that. So behavior definitely improves because students really, and it's not always that they're going off campus to buy lunch somewhere. Sometimes they're just going home. Yeah. Because it's easier. They don't have to make lunch in the morning. You can drop by home, have lunch there. So yes, we see the benefit at the site level for sure.
Thank you for the very professional presentation.
Yeah, I would echo their comments. Great job. Well done. I support it, and we'll see how it goes.
And I would just like to say I appreciate the initiative you guys took to bring this forward and do the survey and so on and so forth. Good job.
So, a point of clarification, my understanding is board consensus is to open the door for this off-campus concept. We might need some time to organize a proper rollout with communication and such. So, but I want to make sure that that's what the direction of the board is.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to committee reports. And by the way, you young ladies, feel free to go home and get your homework done or whatever. Committee reports. District Advisory Committee, Trustee Lampel.
The next District Advisory Committee meeting is on March 9th at 6 o'clock in this room.
Thank you. District English Language Advisory Committee meeting, Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, the next DLAC committee is, meeting is January 30th at 6:30 PM in the Lammersville Elementary School multipurpose room.
Thank you. Education Committee. The Education Committee's next meeting will be held on February 25th at 6:30 here in the boardroom. Facilities Committee, Trustee Clements.
The Facilities Committee met on December 19th. We welcomed St. Vinod, the newest community representative on the committee. We discussed several things, including construction of the foul ball barrier that the board has already approved. The district staff, we discussed the fact that it would be better to have professionals install that rather than have district staff try to do it. So that additional cost will be coming to the board at a later date for approval or for discussion and approval. We also discussed the summer swim program with the CSD. They brought last year's contract and had some changes. We requested that they incorporate the changes rather, and so that we could bring a full proposal with a recommendation to the board. Some of the changes they're looking for is a 2-year agreement, we are asking for cost adjustments. Anyway, obviously nothing's done. When that agreement is fully drafted, it'll come to the board for discussion and approval. And district staff presented an update on energy usage. I wanted to thank district staff for their efforts at Cuesta Elementary. As the board knows, this has been a struggle since the school opened. And I wanted to point out that energy consumption at Cuesta went down by 11.6% from 2017 to 2018 and decreased by another 33% in 2019. So we made a lot of progress on that, and I wanted to commend district staff for that. And then finally, they're looking into the possibility of installing solar, but it's just in its infancy at this time. The next facility meeting is February 6th at 6:30 in the district boardroom.
I had a question of the Facilities Committee and staff. I noticed the stats that you mentioned as far as the energy usage at Cuesta, and they were all expressed in percentages. I would be very interested to see the actual numbers, to see how Cuesta lines up as compared to other campuses in real numbers rather than percentage of what they used to be there.
We'll make sure that's discussed at the February meeting and bring it to the board for you.
Thank you. Moving on, Policy Committee, Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, the Policy Committee has just finished reviewing the latest packet of policies, so those will be coming to the board at the next board meeting. And there is a second read for policies on today's agenda.
Thank you. Safety Committee, Trustee Balzerini.
Safety Committee met today. We reviewed all the site plans. We did a gallery walk. I still think that's a great idea. Nice job on that, Mr. Harrison. And they'll be coming to the boards for approval next month.
I also wanted to mention that also discussed at the Safety Committee meeting were future CERT trainings for district staff, and the committee was introduced to the new district SRO, Daniel DeLashment. And the Wellness Committee, our next wellness meeting will be February 12th at 3:30 here in the boardroom. Governing Board reports. Student Trustee Afsar Mohammed.
So last week, leadership started preparing for all the events for the semester, such as our annual Valentine's Day Grams, Spring Rally, Spring Dance, and Prom. And we are also planning Kindness Week and the Academic Awards Breakfast, which will occur on the last week of January. And yesterday we had our Wrestling Senior Night, which went very well. And we also had conditioning for softball, swimming, golf, track and field, and baseball, which have also started.
Thank you. Trustee Bonilla.
So in addition to reviewing the policies for the policy committee and finalizing that, I also attended the community meeting on Saturday, excuse me, January 11th at the multipurpose room at Mountain House High School to hear the information presented about the cell tower.
Thank you. Trustee Lampel.
I attended the Facilities Committee meeting on December 19th, and I also attended the Community Information Forum on the cell tower proposal on January 11th.
Thank you. Trustee Balzerini.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Trustee Clements.
Similar to Trustee Lempel, I attended the Facilities Committee meeting, as I mentioned, on December 19th, and the informational meeting this past weekend on the cell tower.
Thank you. I too attended the informational meeting at the high school on the cell tower. Yesterday, my wife and I donated blood at the HOSA Red Cross blood drive at Mountain House High School. And earlier today, I attended the Safety Committee meeting. Receiving of public comments. The board shall give members of the public an opportunity to address the board either before or during the board's consideration of each agenda item. At a time so designated on the agenda, members of the public may also bring before the board matters that are not listed on the agenda of a regular meeting. The board may refer such a matter to the superintendent or designee or take it under advisement, but shall not take action at that time. The board may place the matter on a future agenda of a subsequent meeting for discussion or action. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. And the first speaker I have here is Samik Mo.
Good evening. My name is Samik Modi. I do not have district age or school age children in the district. But I wanted to bring something to your attention that I found disappointing, and I'm hoping the board or the staff could take some actions to rectify it. So back on November 13th, I filled out the contact form on the website asking about the status of lunch debt in the district. We were actually interested in paying off the lunch debt for the district as a goodwill gesture, and at the time we wanted to do it anonymously. Didn't get any response from that form. On December 3rd, I emailed the superintendent, and I did get a response the next day, redirecting district staff to respond. I received a response from the district staff member. I will keep names out of this for this purpose. Basically saying, here's the information. On that same day, I called the person and left a voicemail. I never received a phone call back to this day. Wanted a little bit more detail so that we could arrange it. Also wanted to pay it through the foundation so that my company would match the funds as well. On the 4th, I did respond by email with the follow-up questions. On the 18th, having not yet received a response, submitted another email saying wanted to follow up on this. Maybe it's easier to talk through this. Please let me know. Left my phone number. Never got a response by phone. On the 18th, I did receive some information. I responded back saying, still had questions. Please let me know when we can discuss on the phone. Please send a few options. Never got a response. So I am disappointed in just the lack of follow-through for something that is I think in all means is a positive thing that could have happened for the district. So, I know by coming here, I've lost the anonymous method by which we wanted to execute on this, but I want to at least express my disappointment and make the board aware. The second thing, while I have a minute left, I wanted to share, back in Chicago, I was on a condo board, a high-rise in Chicago, and we did enter into a cell phone agreement with Verizon, with towers. In general, I'm supportive of that type of arrangement. The warnings that I will have is the contract that we had entered into was a 20-year-long contract. It had 5-year increments where only the vendor, Verizon, could opt out if they wanted to, but we had no leverage. So they could, at 5 years, say, okay, we're done with it. The other thing that we found out is that the contract included terms so that they basically had a certain amount of area that they had, but they could then put as many antennas as they wanted within that area. So when they wanted to put a second antenna, we did not get any additional revenue. So A, we didn't have any choice in saying no. B, we got nothing extra out of it. And so if there's, the risk that you guys are hearing about, potential risk that you hear about now is obviously double that time. So I did email the contact that was on that FAQ to say, hey, can you send me the draft terms? I wanted to just review it out of my interest. Did not hear anything. So, or I'm sorry, he did respond and say there are no terms yet. So please make sure you consult appropriately before entering into that type of agreement for financial reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to ask Superintendent Nicholas to follow up on his concerns.
Be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next public speaker is Torella Nava.
Hello, my name is Tarsila Nava. I know.
Apologize for.
Right. I'm here because in regards to parking at Wickland, something really concerns me. I take my grandkids every single morning to Wickland this year, starting this year. I started in January, and I pick them up every day. And when I started, there was one parking space that was reserved, and I thought it was for a very handicapped person that, they take to the school there, and they had to get them to the door. Now, the last few months, I noticed there's 3 of them, and I just didn't understand, and I thought, oh, well, they're empty all the time, every time I've gone. And I said, oh, I'll park here to pick up the kids. And then I went inside to the, I was standing there, and somebody came by and put this nasty note on my window. And I went into the office and I asked, what's going on? And they said, well, you can't park there because those spaces are auctioned off. And I'm sorry, but when I heard auction off, I'm like, excuse me, this is a public school. We pay taxes. I didn't know the spaces that at the schools are being auctioned off. It really, really surprised me, and it surprises me because a lot of people cannot afford to buy things at an auction. I mean, to me, it's discriminating against low-income people. Even though we live in Mountain House, there's a lot of low-income people here, and that really bothers me. And I've gone through the steps, and if I have to keep going on, I will, but that really, really concerns me, especially since the spaces at Wickland are very, very limited. And if you have a chance to park there when you can, you're lucky. I don't have a problem with staff parking. I know they have to park, they have to go to school, but when you have to auction spaces for whatever reason, I think something's wrong there. I mean, I don't think all of them are paying taxes for this to happen. And I don't know what's next, a room, a desk, or a lunch table. I don't know, but it bothers me. And that's why I'm here, and that really concerns me. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. And the other thing I just want to say, I'd like to thank, I've never spoken here before. I don't know your staff, but I've only came across the principal and your superintendent, and I'd like to say that I was very impressed with their listening skills. I'm glad they listened to me and they made me feel comfortable. And there's a superintendent, I'd like to thank you for that. But I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Stephanie Olson.
Got a hodgepodge for you. First thing, I just wanted to invite you all to our crab feed for the Mountain House Athletic Booster Club on March 7th at the Tracy Portuguese Hall. It's going to be the best one yet, and we're excited. We're excited to see what's happening at the high school with athletics. It seems like, each year at a new high school, things just get better and better, and the flow seems better. And I'm just really impressed with all the people that spend so much time to coach our kids and be there for them, because I feel like athletics is such a benefit to kids' mental health, and it makes them more disciplined in other aspects of their life. And so it's great to see the programs thriving and to have those people that care so much. Second thing I wanted to thank you for was the survey regarding 8th grade promotion, because, you've heard from me a lot on that. And I was really happy to see the results confirmed what I was pretty sure the community felt, but I was glad to see it solidified. And I thank you for that, taking the time to listen to the community. And I hope that will jump over into an action to change promotion going forward from the board. And then finally, I just had a few concerns about attendance. The one policy, the independent study, I've never had to use independent study thus far in my life, but and I actually understand why the board was concerned about it, because I know that it can be abused by families, and teachers work really hard to create independent study plans, and then when people don't do the work after they've spent that time preparing, I think it's frustrating, and I think the board was listening to teachers and trying to support them in that endeavor. I just wonder if maybe it went a little too far with the limit of 3, and I would ask you to consider, I don't even know if it's legal because I haven't looked into ed code, but possibly having a 1-strike rule for families that abuse it. Say if you want to take independent study, fine, but if you don't do it, that's your last chance. Because in that regard, it doesn't punish the families that aren't going to take advantage of it and really, just don't have other options for their vacation time. Because my husband's an attorney and I'm an attorney, and those attorneys that work in law firms, they don't have a life that's controlled by a school calendar, unfortunately. So sometimes vacations have to come at different times. And then also with respect to attendance, I think there might be some confusion in the district with regard to ed code and notifications to parents, because per my understanding of ed code, a student can have excused absences for illness, and that yet after 3 absences and not consecutive absences, I've been receiving a not so nice email from the school saying that my daughter is going to be required to have a doctor's note for every absence thereafter. And ed code excuses absences for illness, and also a student isn't considered excessively absent until 10 absences. And I don't think it's fair, and I think it's an undue burden on families to require a doctor's note after 3 days, especially when the handbook also says keep your kid home for fever, diarrhea, vomiting, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like some clarification on that too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Moving on to consent items for consideration. Would anyone on the board like to discuss or remove anything from the consent items?
I'll move for approval of consent items as presented.
Second. Oh, she beat me.
I had just some clarifications on the consent items. On the meeting minutes from the last meeting, item 14 is adjourning from open session, and there are 2 adjournments from open session, 1 minute apart by different members, and I believe the first one, item 14, is a typo. I think it should not be there. The next one, I wanted some clarification. It's a question for staff. One of the warrants is for $26,000 for gym doors, and I was just curious if that is a warranty issue.
I can't speak to the warrants. The high school is 3 years old and older, other than the new wing, so I'd have to know which section the doors were in. But the general, it's in the, if these are the ones in the gym, then the gym is beyond warranty.
Okay, thank you. And I also had a question about the school-sponsored field trips. The DECA is listed as funding coming from LUSD, and I just was curious if there was a specific funding source for that, or if it comes out of the general fund, or if it was funds earmarked to the high school.
So I'll have Mr. Harrison answer that question. I don't know if this is a national competition or if it's coming from the school budget.
The school does have a budget for travel and for activities that are related to DECA and HOSA, et cetera. So it is a general fund item, but it is budgeted to the high school.
So it's a budgeted item. Thank you. Having a first and a second, all in favor?
Point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President. So, I don't know that I understood what you were saying about the times and one being a typo. Would that be approve consent items as amended then?
Yeah.
So we would withdraw the first.
President Pombo just spoke faster than I did. So I'll amend my motion to include the correction on the minutes.
I'll second.
All right, having a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. District,
Wait, we need to welcome people. No, it's me. It's me.
It's always been Sharon.
Always been me.
okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to welcome the following new employees to our Lammersville family. Marisol Amador, a high school custodian and security 3. Lloyd Chenti, K-8 custodian 1. Meyer Khan, high school lead custodian and security. And Flor Torres Molina, high school custodian and security 3. Welcome to Lammersville.
And thank you, Trustee Lampel. Moving on, District Administrative Report, Superintendent Report.
I just have two quick items. First of all, I have in my hand an analysis of Governor Newsom's 2020-2021 state budget. We're doing an analysis, and we've sent some questions out to some experts to see if our interpretation of the budget and how it is. On first blush, it's a less focused budget. It has more items attempting to deal with. There's more focus on issues such as housing, healthcare, and the climate. And it appears in the first overview that there's less LCFF money coming directly to the budget, a COLA that will be smaller than last year, and some confusingly explained, but some potential relief in the area of special education. I will be bringing more information forward to the board, but Governor Newsom, when he came into office, said that California was the 38th ranked per pupil spending state in our country, and this budget does not reflect an effort to move us up to a higher number or a smaller number on the list, more towards number 1. So when we get more information, we'll share that.
That's basically what school services said, that it's unfocused and it's not helping us increase our per student funding, that it's just spreading it out to areas that aren't even funded yet, rather than focusing on improving what we have.
And one of the concerns we have is we always worry about them bragging out front and then reaching into our back pocket. There appears to be some potential back pocket reaches in this, but I will point out that whoever wrote one of these updates wrote, this is the highest amount of education spending in the history of California, with a very tepid amount of money coming forward. So they need to be more transparent with their explanations of the funding, from my perspective. And then just a quick update in terms of community development. I have 3 maps. They're the permit pulled maps. We're going to put up here on the screen. This is College Park. We call it AB. Sometimes we call it Costa. This would be this kind of a dissected square with like a blue diagonal line there. Anything to the left of that blue diagonal line is neighborhood A. So you can see that the development is moving along. A purple means a new permit, yellow means a house being built, and green means the house is done. So that community is moving along. We are unsure to the diagonal blue line to the right, which is neighborhood B, exactly what the timelines are for development of that section, but we have a significant amount of communication going with the developer there from Mountain House Investors. Next slide, please. This is Cordes Village. As you can see, there's 4 rectangles. The very large one in the upper left-hand corner is the high school site. In the middle, there is the Cordes site, and then the little rectangle to the left of it is the park. To the bottom left, that square or rectangle is undeveloped but planned high-density housing. As I understand it, it would be similar to the development that's happening across the street directly to the west. And below that is commercial development. And then if you go to the middle square rectangle, and then there's a busier version to the right there, that is D2 and D4. That is fully prepared with roads, model homes, and we are enthusiastically waiting for the CSD board to approve the maps for conditions of approval, which have been met, which will allow us to sell the last Mello-Roos bonds for the funding of Cordes Elementary School. And then the last slide, this is Neighborhood C, Hanson Elementary School. And as you can see, this one is almost complete. And if you look to the middle, there's kind of a, I don't know what that shape would be, but it's kind of a roundish with this rectangle part to it in the middle where Hanson is. There, that's Hanson campus. The triangular part above it is the park, which is currently being put in. And if you go to the right of the Hanson campus, that is a new development also being built. And there are 3 model homes that are almost completed, and they've pulled permits for additional, and that'll be 131 units, I believe, when that is done. So I think when the weather clears, we're going to see that take off rapidly. So, Mr. President, that's my presentation. I just wanted the folks to see the evolution of where we stand in terms of the development.
The spot on the map where the cursor is right now, that is multifamily units, correct?
Correct, high density. So it looks like a big giant house until you get to the front. There are 2 garage doors. So it looks kind of like a townhouse, but the townhouse is as big as a house.
Duplexes or triplexes or what have you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, what's our plan for D2 and T4? We've been very, very patient with the CSD. Now what?
It's an item we're going to be discussing over the next board meetings, but we're still we have a couple of months before this gets to be a pressure-filled situation. But the bottom line is there are 3 sections or 3 approvals that the board held up last year in the latter part of 2019 in an effort to put pressure on developers to deliver promises or stated promises from all of the development groups, primarily Grantline Road. So our issue for Mello-Roos funds is tied up in that. We believe they can continue to leverage the developers with the other approvals, and it would be no problem for them to approve D2 and D4 as those conditions of approval have been met. So we'll be discussing options on how we're going to deal with that.
And just for clarification, the board that you referred to is the MHCSD board.
That is correct.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Moving on to district enrollment report, Superintendent.
Yes, on Friday we had an enrollment of 6,027, and as of tonight it's 6,038. Wow. And we have 70 enrollment packets in what we call the queue or the air. And so not all of these will deliver students in our schools, but it gives an indication that the growth for this year is continuing.
Wow. Thank you. Item C, district maintenance and operations.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I received the site visit summary report from our energy manager when she was here over Thanksgiving. I'll be doing a board report on that at the next board meeting for everyone's information. I was at the safety committee meeting this afternoon. I was at the cell tower meeting, on Saturday at the high school. Last Thursday and Friday, we had our fire sprinkler testing done at Altamont, Bethany, Wickland, Cuesta, and the high school. Last Wednesday, I was at the Cordes PDC DO construction meeting. Cordes is going along well. You may have noticed they moved their old construction trailer and starting to level out the area where the baseball field is going to go. They poured some concrete out there yesterday for the dugouts, that kind of stuff. The PDC actually has some color on the outside of the building, so you can see what color the building's gonna be. The DO is pretty much done. I fixed some of Thor's holes today. Just kidding, Thor. Just kidding, joking. The warehouse, the interior is painted. They're putting the ceiling grid in, and they are working on the fire alarm, and the building should be ready around the 24th, so a little over 10 days or so. Also, last Wednesday we had our fire reinspection at Lammersville. It was interesting. Went pretty well. We have one issue we may have to arm wrestle over, but everything else is okay. We had a very busy winter break. Our new grounds company started on January 2nd. I've already got several positive comments from the sites in the short time they've been here, so that's good news. I finished all the programming for the thermostats at Lammersville, Bethany, and Wickland. They're programmed all the way through the first week of August, and whenever the calendar comes out for next year, I could put in next year's calendar. We did our smog report went into the state. Our environmental report went into the state as it's supposed to. The elevator and wheelchair inspections, all that paper went into the state. We should get our new permits next week. The fire hood inspections were completed at Altamont, Hanson, and Cuesta over the winter break. The stormwater catch basins at all the sites were completed over the break. That's a twice a year deal. We opened up civic permits for the spring use facilities. It went pretty smooth. We had one user group's not happy with us, but everybody else seems to be okay. And I was at the facilities meeting on December 19th with several of you. And staffing update as of yesterday was the first day we had everyone in place.
Yay.
So, and that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
The you mentioned fire sprinkler testing.
Mhm.
How often is that? Is that every?
It's done twice a year. Yeah.
Further questions or comments?
And we had an issue at one of the buildings, and they sent the tech out yesterday to work on it. So, just so you know.
Thank you, sir.
You got it. Thank you.
Moving on to action items. Item A, consider approval 2019-2020 intra-district transfer requests. Staff report?
None.
Move to approve 2019-2020 inter and intra-district transfer requests.
Second.
Having a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And I just realized I failed to ask for the student trustees preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Item B, consider approval of Division of State Architecture required inspections for Julius Cordes Elementary School and Professional Development Center. Contract with Rick Ahart Inspection Services to continue the remainder of the contract from Don Williams, previously approved on 12/12/2018. Staff report?
Yeah, there is a new regulation which created this action item. Don Williams, who has been providing services for us based on the new regulations, can no longer provide that service. Rick Ahart was working underneath that contract because he works for Mr. Williams. So in order to rectify and make right with the new regulation, we need to bring this action item forward where Rick Ahart would get the contract directly.
So he has actually done work here in
Correct.
Mountain House. Okay.
Yeah, nothing would change. He's doing the service now. It's just paperwork.
Okay.
Move to approve the Division of State Architect required inspections for Julius Cordes Elementary School and the Professional Development Center. Contract with Rick Ahart Inspection Services to continue the remainder of the contract from Don Williams, previously approved on 12/12/2018.
I'll second.
Having a first and second, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consider approval of the audit certification form for the annual audit report ending June 30th, 2019. Staff report?
This is an annual perfunctory act.
I'll move for approval of the annual audit report ending June 30th, 2019.
Second.
Having a first and second, are there any questions or comments? student trustee preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, approval of the 2019-2020 Independent Auditor Selection Form. Staff report?
This is an annual perfunctory act.
I'll move for approval of the 2019-2020 Independent Auditor Selection Form.
Second.
Having a first and second, are there any questions or comments? Student trustee preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, consider approval of the 2020-2021 Budget Development Calendar. Staff report?
This is an annual perfunctory act.
I move to approve the 2020-2021 Budget Development Calendar.
Second, sorry.
Having a first and second, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, consider approval of Governing Board Resolution 1920-15 to allow assignment of teachers credentialed outside of a major or minor under the licensing certification personnel law from the 2019-2020 school year. Staff report?
Yeah, this is a resolution that allows us to meet the compliance with credentialing, but it also begs the point that with the teachers' crisis, attempts in particularly the middle school program to develop a feeder program, elective programs and such, we need to do this to meet compliance. But we hope that the state doesn't squeeze so tight that we aren't able to run the programs the way we would like to run them in the name of a credentialing tied to outside of academic classrooms. But in essence, this would allow us to meet the compliance regulation.
And I am glad to move for approval of Governing Board Resolution 1920-15.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
It says 2109 to 2020, so there's a minor amendment we need to do to the resolution.
Where?
To the motion.
Oh, on the actual resolution?
Yeah.
Oh, 2109 rather than 2019.
Sorry, now you can go.
So would you like to restate your motion as amended?
I was just looking at it for where that is.
It's
It's
correct
right,
on the
the
resolution.
last line of the,
Uh-huh.
It's correct on the resolution, it's just a typo on the agenda.
Oh, on the agenda, okay. So what we're approving is the resolution.
Yes.
So I'll move for approval of Governing Board Resolution number 19-20-15 to allow assignment of teachers credentialed outside of major or minor under the licensing of certificated personnel law for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
having a first and second, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, please.
Matthew Balzerini.
Aye.
Ann Bonilla.
Aye.
Sharon Lampill.
Aye.
Colin Clements.
Aye.
David Pombo.
Aye. Item G, consider approval of second reading and adoption of updated board policies and administrative regulations. Staff report?
None.
I have a question. I would like to pull Board Policy 4218.1 off of this list, as that board policy is specifically for merit districts. I looked it up on Gamut, and the sample policy on the Gamut webpage for 4218, which we also have, says that the following policy is for use by non-merit districts, which is what we are. So ours should be 4218.1. If you go, I'm sorry, ours should be 4218. 4218.1 is specifically for merit districts, of which we are not.
Okay. So that would be move to approve the second reading and adoption of the updated board policies and administrative regulations as amended.
Second.
Having a first and second, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item H, consider approval of Governing Board Resolution 1920-16 in support of Proposition 13, Public School K-12 and College Health and Safety Bond Act of 2020. Staff report.
So I have a quick, a couple of slides just to kind of explain the relationship between state construction bonds and our community and the building of K-8 schools. In March, Proposition 13, which is, I have no doubt will get confused with the 1978 legendary Proposition 13 on property taxes. But let me just lay out for the board and the community the importance of state construction bonds. So our K-8 schools are funded through a mitigation agreement with developers. The first mitigation agreement was signed in 1998, and it identifies the funding for K-8 schools as coming from Mello-Roos taxes and state matching funds. State matching funds are based on state construction bonds that voters approve. The last state construction bond that was passed in 2016 for $9 billion was called Prop 51, and all of that money for new construction is allocated. We are a rapidly growing master plan community, and we have multiple schools. We have Cordis being built. We have Costa that's being designed. We have Neighborhood K across the north of Byron Highway and Neighborhood L. Those will all be built over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. The district is reliant on a continuous existence of state construction bonds, and Governor Brown was against this and has thrown off the timing for state construction projects. So we are in a catch-up game. Hanson Elementary School will get state funds from Proposition 51. Cordis Elementary School will get state funds from either Prop 51 or Prop 13. We're right on the bubble. Excuse me. Costa Elementary School will need funds from Prop 13 or a new state construction bond in order to be built. And Neighborhood K and Neighborhood L schools will need to be getting funds from Prop 13 or a new additional state construction bond to be built. The timeline on those are: we opened Hanson in 18, Cordis in 20, Costa is projected for 2022, Neighborhood K in 2024, and Neighborhood L in 2027. Next slide, please. All right, so Proposition 13, which is entitled starts off where Prop 51 leaves off. It'll be on the ballot for March 3rd, 2020. It'll be for $15 billion, of which $9 billion will be identified for K-12 schools. The other part, $6 billion, will be identified for community colleges and universities. For the interest of Lammersville Unified, in K-12, $2.9 billion for new construction. And that's where those schools will get their state funding from. The others will be spread out for other projects. The biggest amount for modernization, and then the final thing is there's $6 billion that's going to community colleges, CSU, and UC campuses. Next slide, please. And then finally, there's some modifications to rules that we've grown accustomed to in the state funding regulations and rules. It's going to be a less balanced split this time between new and modernization projects. They're focusing on modernization, health, and safety. There's no longer a first come, first serve process. Instead, the emphasis is on districts with health and safety issues first. Districts have to submit a 5-year facility plan. It also raises local GEO bond funding limits based on the assessed property value. It lowers the limits on developer fees tied to multifamily residential properties. That will affect us because at some point in time in the development of Mountain House, there are intended to be apartments. And so I don't know if this goes retro back to original approvals, but it could cost the district money when those go in. And it supports the building of preschools. So that's just a general overview of Proposition 13 for 2020. Not the one in 1978.
Just looking at this very quickly, do we know how much this is going to cost households? Like what amount per 100,000 or anything like that?
No, for this GeoBond local one, we would have to go forward with a new one. The one we were successful in 2016 was about $16 per household for 30 years.
Mhm.
This would not be near
This would
that
be
much.
even less.
Yeah, significantly less.
Okay.
And this, in and of itself, would not affect that now, only if we went forward with the GeoBond in the future.
Correct.
This, I believe, would be funded, as most bonds are, from state general fund monies.
Yes.
Thank you, Superintendent Nicholas, for the very succinct description of what we're looking at here. Are there any further questions or comments by the board?
Move to approve governing board resolution 19-20-16 in support of Proposition 13, Public Preschool, K-12, and College Health and Safety Bond Act of 2020, Assembly Bill 48, O'Connell Glacier.
Second.
Having a first and second, student trustee,
Aye.
aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Roll call, please.
Matthew Balzerini.
Aye.
Colin Clements.
Aye.
Ann Bonilla.
Aye.
Sharon Lampel.
Aye.
David Pombo.
Aye. Moving on to item 11, information and discussion items. We've already dispensed with item A, so we'll move on to item B, short-term independent study data. Staff report?
We presented the data for the board in the packet tied to short-term independent study. At this point in time, I think we've covered all of the issues unless the board has other data they'd like us to seek. And so the staff is requesting a discussion and direction on this topic.
Questions or comments by the board?
I heard what the parents had to say. As an educator, I'm torn on this issue. Part of me wants to work with our families for whom this is an issue and possibly increasing the limit. And these are just my thoughts. But the other part of me, as the lifelong educator and having been a teacher that had to prepare these, takes the teacher a lot of time to prepare these. They don't get any extra prep time. They don't get any extra pay. And then, I don't know, as a teacher, probably half of mine were never done. And I don't want our teachers wasting their time on that. So quite honestly, I'm torn, and I'd like to hear how the rest of the board feels.
I feel like the number is too restrictive. I would like to see it moved somewhere 5 to 7 rather than 3, my personal opinion. I agree with Trustee Lampel on the hardship that it presents to teachers. I also see the hardship it presents to parents and students if we don't allow it to happen. And we do have, I believe, already in policy, and I would not be in favor of changing that part of the policy, a one strike and you're out. If your child gets independent study, doesn't complete, doesn't comply, doesn't get all the work done, they're no longer eligible for it in the future. And I think that should really cut down on wasting teachers' time as far as preparing the independent study program for a student and then not having it completed.
If you look at the numbers that came back, okay, so I was very happy to see that the highest number, student returns on time and submits all assigned work, was 111. But the next highest number, that is the next highest one, yeah, they're in order. Student returns on time and assigned work is incomplete. That's the next highest one at 40.
I would like to suggest that we consider, having been a teacher and having prepared these packets and having had students return without completing the work, I have definite empathy for our teachers and the frustration that that causes. And also the lost educational time. The students are very far behind when they come back. However, what I'm noticing is we're looking at this as a K-12 situation, and I'm wondering if we should not consider 3 times in K-8 and 1 time in high school. And that way we have 4 times, but it's not spread out over the lifetime. Because when you miss high school time, if say you took 3 of these independent studies when you were in high school, that's a significant hit. The amount of work that's done at a high school is very different than the amount of work that's done in the K-8. It's not that they're not, equally rigorous. However, it just moves a lot quicker at the high school level, and the rigor and the continuity is so crucial. So I was just thinking perhaps we should think about it as a limit for the high school level and a limit for the K-8, as opposed to looking at the entire lifetime span of the students. That's my thoughts.
Interesting.
I'm kind of going to echo President Pombo's thoughts, but expand on them a little bit, because since we already have the one and done, one strike and you're out policy, the only people who are going to go, like, let's say we currently have 3, let's say we increased it to 5 or 4. The only people that are going to use that additional, which is the incremental increase in the teacher effort that we're talking about, are the ones that have already done 3 successfully, right? Because if they did 1 and didn't do it, they're not even in the running for the increase. So really, increasing it only benefits the students that have done it successfully multiple times. The only people that are limited are the ones who have done it successfully multiple times. Because if a family goes to take their child out for whatever reason, and they don't ensure that that child completes the work, they're not the ones arguing for number 4, 5, or 6, 4 or 5.
And the only thing I would add to Trustee Bonilla's suggestion that we limit it to 1 in high school is that the high school relies more on online and computer, and it seems to me it would be easier for the teachers to accommodate kids in high school because of the online aspect than the younger kids. Although if it was suggested 4 in K-8 and 2 in high school, I would be fine with that. Are there more comments from the board? Because we have some parents who would like to.
I would just say I'm in favor of increasing the number of occurrences. I think 3 is pretty restrictive.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to hear from Jill, and I know I'm going to butcher your last name, but Dicoteo? I know that's wrong, but. And then if the board has more discussion after the parents have spoken, we can resume.
Hi, Jillian Dakota. Good evening, members of the board, President and Superintendent. Thank you so much. I wanted to emphasize the use of Canvas. I wanted to reiterate that students, even as young as 6th grade, are using Canvas to communicate with their teacher. One of the parents that spoke a few months ago emphasized that when they were in Paris, the classroom work was being uploaded daily and was able to complete the work daily. And the idea of a 1 strike, you're out, I honestly do not think that's fair, because if you do that 1 strike in kindergarten and a 11th grader, 12th grader has this amazing opportunity, but unfortunately they didn't complete a packet in kindergarten, they lose out on an opportunity. I liked the staff's proposal last month with the option for Saturday school to make up the schoolwork and attendance, and that also allows for funding to still come into the district. So I would appreciate looking back into that. And like President Pombo has mentioned, it's too few. There's too many wonderful opportunities that families can bring. Not every family can take a summer vacation. Many of us who are also public servants can't take summer off because things still move along. I know I'm heavily engaged with city council, so my life is revolved around city council and city council work. So it's a rare opportunity that if I can take time off to take my family on a trip, I would like to do that. And I'm still giving back to the community, and that's the way I feel like I can give back to the community, but also give back to my kids. There's other things that families need to get to: funerals, cultural events. I am aware of some stellar athletes that have had sponsorships representing the U.S. and have had to use independent study in order to go compete. So keeping that idea also with travel, it opens new doors, new interests, new skill levels. And like mentioned in previous months, a child had no interest in art, and after being near where artists were just everywhere, came home and drastically changed and has a huge interest in art. So again, keep in mind the use of Canvas, Google Classroom. There's so many ways for technology to help students keep up while away. And there's also flight time. Families can use that flight time to keep up with schoolwork, but also the importance of spending time with family. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd like to call Brittany Fredrickson, please.
Hi, good evening. Well, I have to say I'm very pleased to have heard the discussion that you guys just had, especially what President Pombo and Clerk Clements here mirror exactly what a lot of the parents here in Mountain House feel. There's certainly ways to mitigate against the risks that the district, that the school has, that the teachers have in their efforts in structuring independent study contracts by perhaps stratifying or, the one strike and you're out policy, things of that nature. I personally, as a parent, am very receptive to those interests, as long as the parents' interests and are also being fully considered by the board. And I do feel like they are. I just also want to emphasize there is a kind of an outcry, a parental outcry in the community. We're a community of commuters, as you're aware, so making it to these meetings is kind of a logistic hurdle at times. But there is a very wide consensus and general support of amending the independent study policy. As you all are aware, the Act would provide students with the flexibility to experience unique educational opportunities outside the classroom. But, more importantly, the more permissible policy, I feel, supports the district's goals and imparting lifelong skills to become effective contributing members of a global society. I mean, you guys call it right out in your goal, your mission statement. So, I would love to see some action towards that end and see it bear fruition here. Like I already mentioned, I think that there are ways to mitigate against the risks that the district has with students not completing the contract and breaching it. And I think a well-structured, revamped policy that's more permissible, more flexible, would certainly go a long way to achieving those ends and just have it resulting in happier, more well-rounded students that have a better, work-life balance, as it were. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This time, Ryan and Lorena Baker.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to speak to the 3-time maximum. My daughter is in the 2nd grade right now, and we took advantage of that program, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. As it stands right now, she's the graduating class of 2030. And she's not allowed to partake in any education outside of Wickland Elementary and the high school. And that would be a very big shame. She's had some very enriching experiences. 2017, we got to go to Europe. She went to the Eiffel Tower, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, got to visit friends in Norway and see a fjord, and stay in Italy. And she remembers that to this day, instead of what she may have missed a week in kindergarten, and that's going to be used against her. So I think extending that to 3 times would be in the best interest of the students. There are compromises. I don't see anything wrong with once a year and having consequences for those that are not performing or if they're coming up too short or just ignoring it altogether. The students that are participating shouldn't be punished, and I do recognize all the efforts that the teachers go into, so that should be rewarded when they come back and can share the experiences with the classroom.
Thank you. Would the board like to discuss this?
I just kind of want to clarify my position. I'm in favor of adding additional days, but the one strike and you're out policy, in my eyes, has to stand for my support at least.
And I agree, and although with the caveat that as it stands now, parents are able to appeal to the board or to the district for, in one of the speakers mentioned kindergarten. Well, if a kid did it in kindergarten and they asked for one freshman year in high school, I think that's, you know.
Right, but the idea behind that is that the kindergartner who's going on an independent study, we're relying on the parents to make sure that the student gets it done.
Right.
And
Well-
in 11th grade, the parents really need to be pushing that kid, and if they didn't push in kindergarten, how much are they going to push in 11th grade to make sure that the work is done? So I would agree with the one strike, and we do have an appeal process. So I agree with the rest of the board. I did want to make one correction to something that one of the parents said. We do not get funding for Saturday school.
Any further discussion?
Do we need to give staff guidance as to what we want in a policy coming
think we
to the
do.
board?
Would it help if I summarize what I think I heard?
Sure.
All right, there were a couple of different numbers, but the two things we need to decide first, I think, is there was an idea about having a K-8 number and a high school number, and we also heard 5 to 7 opportunities and 4 K-8s and 2 high schools. So one would be 6, and so it seems like the new number is floating somewhere between 5 and 7 total, but it would be K-8 and high school separate, or a number between 5 and 7. That's kind of the two places. We're going to keep the one strike with an appeal, and the Saturday school concept will come up with some kind of practice for someone who wants to earn their time back.
Yeah, I'm more for one general number, K-12. That's just my opinion. Listening to what people said, especially in high school, they can probably do more work on their own, even though high school does move so fast and it's so vital. But we have plenty of kids doing classes online. That's true. And if a student is traveling and they can do a class online, they won't miss so much as when I was a teacher, because there was no such thing as online classes then. So I think it's easier for the district to track us, how many, just one K-12 or TK-12.
Do we have consensus to the board, to move forward with a number of 6 throughout the?
I'm comfortable with 6 with appeals.
I think so. That's fine.
Yeah, because families can appeal.
Thank you. And moving on to item C, 8th grade promotion district survey, staff report.
Yes, a survey went out and results were presented. Ultimately, based on a request to reconsider having K-8 promotion on the same night as high school graduation. The numbers came in. There were 2, a first and a second, a clear first and a second. That was about half of the amount of support from the 1,000 people who responded to the survey. So staff is seeking direction about whether or not to communicate to schools a Thursday night K-8 promotion and a Friday night high school, or that we're keeping it the same.
I'm personally in favor of Thursday.
I second that.
Me too. So it sounds like we have consensus of the board to change 8th grade promotion to Thursday nights and stay with the Friday night high school graduation. Moving on to item D, DARE graduations, Bethany and Hanson. And I'm guessing that this is just informational rather than discussion.
Correct. We weren't anticipating getting this information the second we got it. We put it in the Friday letter and out in multiple factors, but we wanted to get it one more time in case someone didn't get it, that those dates are available to you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Do we know who's going? Get my calendar.
I have not checked those dates, but I plan to go to both of them if I'm available.
Yeah, I have them both on my calendar, so as of today, I should be able to make it to both of them.
Thank you. Moving on to item 12, calendar. Thursday, January 30th, 2020 is the DLAC meeting at 6:30 at Lammersville Elementary. Wednesday, February 5th is the next governing board meeting here at 7 o'clock. Thursday, February 6th is the next facilities meeting here at 6:30. Wednesday, February 12th is the next wellness committee here at 3:30. And Wednesday, February 25th is the next education committee.
I'm laughing because that first week in February, Monday is DARE, Tuesday is DARE, Wednesday is a board meeting, and Thursday is facilities.
I noticed that.
That should keep you hopping.
Move to adjourn.
In just a moment, we will be adjourning the closed session where we will be discussing student discipline and other confidential matters, Education Code 35146 and 48900 and 48912B. Conference with labor negotiators, public employee discipline, dismissal, release, and complaint. Conference with real property negotiators. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are now adjourned to closed session. Thank you to everyone who spent some time with us this evening.